Well, here we are back live again with the first stage of the Tour of the Basque Country, still all together on the lower slopes now of the descent from the fourth of the 6 King of the Mountains that these riders have got to traverse on this little circuit that they're doing from Zala out to the west and back towards Zala, a distance of just 139 kilometres, not long by Tour standards, stage race standards, but as I said, lots of niggly little hills to go up and down. They've now done 4 of them, still 2 more to come just near the end. 2 or 3 riders, are they just easing themselves off the front? No, well, not really. And there you see now, wait for the arrow to come up, and there you can see where we are. We're coming down off the 4th climb now, 31 kilometres to go, just a little under 20 miles in pound shillings and pence terms. But those 2 nasty climbs, particularly that the last one of the 6 of the day, the Alto de Pais, which I think they'll find a little bit difficult, and I'm fairly certain that that will be the launch pad for anybody who fancies making a lone break rather than waiting for the sprint finish. We've already had, as I said earlier, a few of the Spanish races already. This year we started off with the Challenge de Mallorca, which is a rather strange race, that one, by any standards, in as much as you don't have to ride all 5 stages. You can pick and choose which ones you ride, but so far as the overall is concerned, obviously to qualify for the overall at the end you've got to have ridden all 5 stages. And there we see a little view, a bit premature I suppose, not many people around there just yet, but they'll be there soon enough. That's the finishing straight, and I believe that's called a finishing line. Thank you very much, Mr. Cameraman, as we go back up front to take a look at what's going on there. Mikel Zarabieta of Spain and the Once team forcing the pace a little as they get ever nearer to the finish. Inside the last 20 miles now, Zarabieta is quite a strong rider, and he'll do as much work as he feels he can possibly do to try and weaken up the opposition for his team leaders. And well, I say leaders because, well, Jose Bepalocchi, Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano, Abraham Milano, Marcos Serrano, who was on the podium at the finish last year in 3rd place. So they've got plenty of options, the Once team, in this particular race. Nice aerial shot of the riders navigating that kind of a roundabout as we go back to the lone leader, but he's only just a few seconds off the front at the moment. Mikel Zarabieta. Zarabieta! I wish they wouldn't have such awkward names. Why can't they be called Smith and Jones? Oh, he's really putting some stick into this, isn't he? But he's got a long way to go to the finish, and I don't think they'll let him have too much leeway. But it does mean that his illustrious team leaders back in the peloton can have an easy time of it. Once have not had too much success so far this season. It's about time that they showed themselves a little bit more and got themselves more into the frame as we get ever nearer to the big stage races. The Tour of Italy, of course, coming up fairly soon, next month. They haven't covered themselves with too much glory. Jan Ruška, one of their regular strongmen, he got a 2nd place behind Victor Hugo Peña of Eurosport in the recent Tour of Murcia, yet another of these popular little Spanish races. So Ruška's had one little kind of a success, 2nd overall I suppose, in a stage race isn't too bad for the Once team, but there's not been a lot else to report from them so far, and I think that may be why they've put out a strong team in this particular race. So mark your card, folks, and put down Once for doing something of significance this week in the Basque Country. Pretty well all together again. Tell you one of the guys who could go well towards the end of this race, and that's Rick Verbrugge, who rides for Lotto, of course. We've seen Rick Verbrugge pull out some startling performances, particularly in time trials. Remember the prologue in the Tour of Italy last year? when it was straight down the prom with a tailwind, and even the slow guys were doing 35 miles an hour. Unbelievable stage that, wasn't it? The fastest ever time trial in any stage race in the history of professional cycling. Rick Verbrugge's victory in the prologue time trial of last year's Tour of Italy. Well, everybody was doing fast times with the tailwind on what I thought was a very uninteresting course, actually. Just straight down the prom, no twists and turns. Not very technical at all, was it? But it sure was fast. And Rick Verbrugge was the fastest of them all in a new all-time race record. Well, Rick is the lead man for the Lotto team. And he's got people like Mario Hertz, who's in pretty good form, had some good results so far this season, Serge Baguet, and Kurt van der Wouwer, who's one of the strong men to act as a faithful lieutenant. So Rick Verbrugge with a time trial to finish on Friday. If he's there or thereabouts, you never know. He's got his younger brother, by the way. I've not come across him before, but he has a younger brother called Jeff. And as we just see one of the, is it a Fassa Bortolo rider getting neutral service from the Mavic neutral service? No, in fact it is a Fassa Bortolo. It's Vladimir Belli. It's Belli who's had a puncture and getting quickly away, so he's got a bit of a chase on to get back to the peloton, which is moving quite quickly, led by the Cofidis riders. Yeah, getting back to the Verbrugges. Rick Verbrugge has a younger brother called Jeff. He only turned pro at the start of last year, and he's been given the ride in the pace of Tom Stremesh in the Lotto team this week. I don't think I've seen Rick's brother Jeff before. He's no real palmares, no real form to go on, as we see one of the Ibernestos now having a bit of a dig off the front. So I'll have to watch out, but I still think that Rick Verbrugge is the sort of guy who could do something in this particular race. This is actually Pais, number 67 for the Ibernesto.com team. They've got the two Oza brothers leading their team, Unai and Aitor Oza, the Ibernestos. Dariusz Baranowski, the Pole, and Brozhnia, his fellow Polish rider, Tomasz Brozhnia, are also in the Ibernesto team this week. So that's a pretty strong lineup as well. And of course, their really big name, if you like, one of my favourite riders of recent times, Juan Miguel Mercado, who has had a big win already this year for Ibernesto.com. He won the Settimana Catalan just a week or two ago. And of course, you might recall he won Burgos. He won the Tour of Burgos last year, Mercado. Super Mercado he was that week. Beat Oscar Sevilla up one of the big climbs to take the stage when everybody, myself included, I confess, had Sevilla down to win. The little choir boy looked as though he'd got it all sewn up until suddenly Mercado came up on his back wheel. Not only came up to him as the level crossing gates just opened in time. Oh, we're not even going over them. Oh, well, there we are. Forget I said that. And yes, and Mercado went straight past Sevilla, much to everybody's surprise, and went on to win Burgos. Remarkable win. And he's in the Banesto team as we look at this Banesto rider, Paxavilla, number 67, going off the front at the moment. Well, there's a sprint, there's one more sprint, a Metas Volante as they call them in Spain, and I think that's what he's probably going for. Again, because of the lack of information we got before we came on air from the Spaniards, I'm afraid that we didn't find out who had won either the King of the Mountains climbs earlier on in the race, or indeed the earlier sprints. There are 3 Metas Volante sprints every day. This is the third of them, and it's actually in the town of Zala where they will finish. Now, I mentioned that this race had 3 loops. This is where the race will finish in 25 kilometers time. They're actually coming through the finish line, and they're now going out on a circuit of 25k. Then they will come back here, and that will be the finish in another 25k from now. So here you see the race leader coming through, knowing exactly how much further he's got to do, around the third of the various little loops that they do on this particular stage. And as you can see, he's only got, what, 100 metres, maybe, well, a little more than that, maybe 200 metres on the peloton. can't really see him staying clear because of those 2 climbs that have still to come on this last loop. And the peloton coming through the finish line, where they will see the checkered flag next time around. They've been some considerable distance out to the west of Zala, but now back where they started at 2 o'clock Central European time. And off they go on this final loop of some 25 kilometres. The Ibanez man in the lead, but will he be in the lead when we come back after this commercial break? Spaniards. And it can be quite confusing at times when you get all the Gonzalez's and the Jimenez's, Los Angeles and things like that. And I try to just stick to the actual surname of the rider concerned, because I always think it makes it slightly easier for us to all understand who we're talking about. Inigo Cuesta, for instance, is actually Inigo Cuesta Lopez, the Cofidis leader, winner of the race here in 1998. But for my money, he's just Inigo Cuesta, and I think most of us would be just happy to settle for that. But it can be a little confusing when you look at all these Spanish names. But that's their tradition. They've always done it that way. They've always included the mother's family name, or the maiden name, if you like, as part of their full name. And it appears on the racing licenses. If you ever look at a Spanish rider's license, you will see Oscar Freire will actually say on his racing license, it will say Oscar Freire Gomez, Gomez being his mother's maiden name. But we all know Oscar just as Freire, don't we? One of the Rabobank boys having a little bit of a dig here to try and get up to the leader, bridge the gap. Forgive me, it's the Jastel rider, isn't it? It's Ricardo Valdez. Ricardo Valdez Prieto. I'm sticking to Valdez. In fact, our captions, as you can see, are just putting whenever there's a Spaniard away, they are sticking to the more simplistic form of just their own surname. Yes, these Jastel Costa de Almeria boys are dark horses in some ways, just as the Relaxed Fuenlabrada boys are. They don't always get into the big races. Some of these second division sides just have to hope for a wild card entry, but they have excelled. And you might recall when the Euskaltel boys were considered second division. I don't think they are now, not by anybody. When they used to get a chance, they used to take it with open arms and grab everything they can get. And they've reached the big time now, I'm happy to say, and are well established in the big races, as we saw in the Tour de France last year particularly. And I've seen teams like the Jastel Costa de Almeria and Relaxed Fuenlabrada performing quite well in that aforementioned Tour of Mallorca, that very, very early season race, which Francisco Cabello incidentally won it for the 3rd year, didn't he? He didn't win a stage, but he was consistently placed every day. The stages went to Galvez, Freire, Flores, Freire again, and Eric Decker, he of the broken leg. Isn't that sad that Decker is out of racing at the moment with a broken leg? I hope that he is back in the peloton before long, because Decker's one of those guys who can set a race alight. We've seen him do it so many times. 3 times in the Tour de France 2 years ago. Remember, triple Decker? It was in all the sporting papers, triple Decker, when he won 3 stages. Let's hope that Eric Decker is back, and let's hope from the British point of view that it's not long before we see David Miller back in the pelotons again, having had his season somewhat disrupted by an early season virus, which has caused him to take an enforced rest. There's not a lot he can do with these viruses. I understand that that's what has caused Laurent Jalabert to pull out of this race, which he was due to ride. But there's strange things, these viruses, that sometimes affect otherwise fit and healthy athletes in all sorts of sports. Doctors will tell you that the only cure really is rest, which is the last thing you want to do, isn't it? You know, when you're a competitive person, that's the last thing you want to do. Now then, here we go. This is the 5th of the climbs of the day. And when they get to the top of this climb, they've only got 18 kilometres remaining. There's how long? I'm just having a look at the descent. Yeah, not too long a descent off the top of this one before they then start the climb of the last one. They get to the top of this one, 18 to go. Down the other side is just 2 kilometres to go, so that's 16 to go, and then a 4-mile climb to the top of the final climb of the day, the Alto de Besi, which is the one where I think we'll see the denouement. It's a good word for a Monday afternoon. I must look it up in the dictionary when I get home. I think that's where we might see this race really split up, if indeed it doesn't split on this one. This is only, they're both 3rd category climbs, but this is only about 2k long. The last one is 4 kilometres of hard climbing. so they might all survive fairly well together up this one. But remember that this is the 5th climb that they've done in a comparatively short time here today. This race starting at 2 o'clock Central European time, and what is it? It's just after, a little after 5 now. So they've been on the road for a little over 3 hours now, and already they're on their 5th categorised climb of the day. Wait for the little arrow to come at the bottom of the picture. It should be on the Avellaneda. Where's the arrow? Thank you very much, sir. There it is, 20k to go, and that's where they are, starting that little climb now. But look at the last one just beyond it, and you will see that's the sting in the tail as we watch this Jastel Costa de Almeria rider trying to go away on this naughty little 2-kilometre climb. Some of these legs must be feeling very tired, but this fella's not showing any signs of it, is he? As he stretches his lead over the rest of the peloton, dancing on the pedals. That's a nice climbing style. Well, these Spaniards seem to produce good riders year after year after year. Not particularly Jastel, I'm talking about Spaniards in general. Ricardo Valdés Prieto, to give him his full name. There you are. His mother will be pleased if she's watching Eurosport on the English channel, which is hardly likely. Don't forget, if you've got any letters, just another reminder, if you want to get in touch with us, I'll be happy to give you a little mention if you've got anything serious to say. Keep it short, keep it tidy, keep it nice. And if I get an opportunity from tomorrow onwards, all you've got to do is get in touch with us here on www.eurosport.com. And if you've got anything interesting to say, and I've got time, I'll give you a little mensch from tomorrow onwards, okay? I think most of you who are regular viewers, and we do have quite a few of you out there, God bless you all, I think you all know the system by now. Now then, look at this Costa del Mira ride. He's really punching quite a biggish gear there, not quite the Lance Armstrong cadence that we've seen in the last year or so. You see him in that time trial recently in the Criterium Internacional when he was only beaten by that 1 second by Alberto Martinez, revving the little gear. He's at it again. There's a nice little place to go and visit if you're not riding a bike race. That's the only trouble when you're on these bike races. If you're out there, you don't have time, unless you're a spectator like these people on the roadside. But if you're part of the race itself, like an official, you see these lovely places and you think, oh, I'd love to go and stop and have a look at that, but of course you can't. You've just got to say, oh, isn't that nice, and go straight past it. Avellaneda, which of course is the top of the climb, the 5th of the 6 climbs of the day, and it has produced 1 or 2 little splits off the front, in particularly the Jastel rider Ricardo Valdés, still just a little bit off the front of the rest of the peloton. It's a little bit early for him to make his bid for glory. He's got a descent of about 2 kilometres off the top of this climb, not particularly technically difficult at all. And then of course the last climb of the day, which I keep talking about, I know, forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but it is the sting of the tail, the Alto de Besi. Looking back to the peloton. Keep the camera still if you can, Mr. Television Cameraman. It's a bit wobbly, isn't it? We get this sometimes on Spanish television. Let's just spot the helicopter up in the sky. There's the helicopter right at the top of the picture there, which is receiving the pictures from the ground and relaying them back to the Spanish television boys, who then pump them up to people like us who are showing them to you. It's a very complicated system, but it works, it works. Well, it does most of the time anyway. We have had our problems on the odd occasions. We go back to our leader, Ricardo Valdés from Jastel, and well, he seems to have got the bit between his teeth now, but he's still got that climb to do, and if he does hang on, it'll be a very, very good performance indeed. My money's on him getting caught before the end, actually. But there you are. How often do I get it right? And there you can see the chase on. In fact, they're very, very close to him indeed. Well, Valdés already having been pulled back, and those 2 riders there have gone straight past him on the descent from the top of the 5th climb of the day. So his little sortie off the front has come to nothing. Oh, now that was a sharp one. I didn't know about that one. The race schedule didn't tell us about that. I said it wasn't a technical descent, but that was pretty technical, actually, wasn't it? Well, that must have caught one or two riders unawares. I hope they all get round that one clearly. Oh, now then, here's one of the Lamprey boys having a go. Now, Lamprey, of course, have got the defending champion, Raimundo Rumsas, winner here last year. Remember that win of his in the Tour of Lombardy a couple of years ago? They've also got Pavel Tonkov, of course, former winner of the Giro. When was that? 96 it was. Now then, here you go. The start of the climb. 4 kilometres long, this. An average percent of 5.6. Doesn't sound all that steep, does it? It's only about 1 in 17, 1 in 18. Not a lot. But remember that this is the 6th climb of the day. This is Sergio Barbero, the Italian, who's gone off the front. But the chase on behind, they're not giving him very much leeway. But now, this is the last of the climbs. When they get to the top of this climb, let me just remind you, there will be just 12 kilometres to go, less than 8 miles. It's mostly downhill. I think I'm right in saying there's just one more little false flat that might just sting the legs a little bit with 4 or 5k to go. But at the moment, Barbero leading the pack for Lamprey Daikin, who have the defending champion now in their team, Raimondas Rumsas, the Lithuanian. Well, Barbero's not succeeded in breaking the peloton, although who knows what havoc is being done at the back. Remember, the peloton is 152 strong, 19 teams here, 8-man teams, 19 times 8 is 152. They all started with their full allocation of 8 riders, although the replacement for Laurent Jalabert in the CSC Tiscali team wasn't known until the very, very last minute, and it turned out to be the Dane, Danny Jonassen, who's taken his place. But Jonassen, of course, is not a team leader. Hamilton, Sørensen, Carlos Sastre, perhaps, Michael Rasmussen, all pretty good riders in their own right, of course. Any one of those could turn out to be the CSC Tiscali team leader in the absence of Laurent Jalabert, the winner here 3 years ago. Into a little bit of shadow now as they go down amongst the trees, so our helicopter shot not always the best. Ah, there we are, back with the cameraman on the ground, and it's one of the Cofidis boys on the front. That looks like Casagrande in second place. He had a hat on earlier, but seems to take that one off in the sunshine, which has produced a very pleasant day for them. Not as hot as it will be, of course, when they get to the big races like the Tour de France and the Tour of Italy, of course, in central northern Italy, before they get up into the Pyrenees towards the end of the race, when the temperatures really can be very, very hot. And even now that the Vuelta, the Tour of Spain, has switched from the dates it used to be earlier on to end of season, it can still be quite hot in the Tour of Spain later on. And Casagrande now, well, now this is interesting. Casagrande showing himself to the fore on this climb. It's a long, long climb, and beginning to shake him out a little bit, although they seem to have all kept with him quite well. That was quite an interesting little dig from Casagrande. I suppose just to show them that he's there. This man is a thoroughbred rider, Casagrande, and well, he did win this race 6 years ago, 1996. He's had a win already this season, Casagrande, just a week or two ago in the Settimana Internazionale, or the Coppion Bartali Memorial, if you like. Alessandro Petacchi must have been really miffed about that, because Petacchi won for Fassa Bortolo, is Casagrande's teammate. He won he won 3 of the first 4 stages. The first stage, in fact, was a team time trial, which was won by Mappi. Very unusual for any stage race to begin with a team time trial, but the Settimana Internazionale is one of those few races that does that way. And Mappi won that, and then Petacchi won the first 3 road stages for Fassa Bortolo, and yet he sort of lost it a bit towards the end. And Francesco Casagrande, fortunately for Fassa Bortolo, who have had this great early season run, he saved the day for them, came through and took the race overall from Paul Luttenberger, who rides for Tacconi, with Cadel Evans, who I mentioned earlier, for Mappi, taking 3rd place. Now then, a fresh attack, this one from one of the Osa brothers. This is Aetor Osa, and this is a tough little climber once again. Look at the grotty road surface, goodness me. That is pretty poor by anybody's standards. Ah, that's a little bit of a better section. Oops, no, we're back to the rough stuff again. Of course, if this were the Tour de France with the mega bucks, what they do is they go around to the local councils before the race comes, and councils actually pay to have the race come to them, and they will even be persuaded to put down some fresh black stuff if there's any section of road that is not quite up to par. And so one good way of getting the roads done, folks, is to lobby to have the Tour de France come to your town, and then you can get some of the potholes filled in. Well, they could do with some of that here, but of course this race, although it's one of the good Spanish races, it's not exactly the richest race in the world, so to speak, in the greater scheme of things, as it were. In fact, I was looking earlier on at the total prize fund for this race, and it works out to about 82,000 something or other euros, which is approximately £55,000 anyway, give or take the odd pound. Roughly 55,000 odd pounds in prize monies, which is not bad, of course, for only 5 days. But nothing on the same level as the Tour de France, where the stage winner every day for 3 weeks wins himself 5,000 quid. Well, it used to be 50,000 francs, which equated to about £5,000 anyway. Now we've got it all in euros. We'll have to wait and see how it all rounds up or rounds down for this year when this year's Tour de France comes around. We're into the euros now, at least. We are here in France and most of the other European countries. So you have to put a different sort of calculating vein into your brain now. Well, Aitor Osa making a good fist of this. Now there's the sign saying 1k to go to the top. If he can get to the top and he's clear, it's virtually all downhill. But it looks like one of the Euskaltel boys riders is going after him. He's just gone past the 1k to go sign, so he's only about 10 seconds behind Osa on the higher stretches of this climb. It's a nasty little one, this, and they're by no means over the worst of it. And there you see the sort of gap that the Euskaltel boy has got. We didn't see the gap between him and the leader here, though, and that's the interesting thing now. Aitor Osa forcing the pace on this last of the 6 climbs, and looking back, we just saw a sneaky little look back behind the motorbike with our television cameraman on it. Well, in fact, sorry, that's one of the press photographers, beg your pardon. And I couldn't see. Now then, we might get some idea of the gap. Ah, here we are. Well, the Euskaltel boy is just about to be reeled in by the rest of the peloton, and Casagrande, there he is, look, doing big turns on the front. Now that's most unusual. You would normally expect at this stage, tactically, to see some of the other Fassa Portolo boys like Vladimir Belli, Ivan Basso perhaps, or Marco Velo doing the work for him. But Casagrande taking this one on his own shoulders, or legs if I can put it that way, and doing a lot of the work to make sure that the iBenesto.com rider, Aitor Osa, doesn't get too much of a lead. Now you can just see Osa there on the right-hand side of the road, half hidden by the motorbikes. The picture foreshortens the gap. I think his gap really is a little more than it probably looks. You can just see a Basque flag, by the way, bottom right. This is Basque country. You don't get more Basque than this. They'll be speaking their local language, not the more traditional Spanish. They've got their own flag. There it is again, as you see the leader coming up towards the top of the climb. Now, what sort of a gap is this as he goes over the climb? It's not a lot. And Casagrande, is it? It is, my goodness me, he is doing oodles of work. Well, the gap's only 5 seconds, but look at the split now then. This is where we see the real damage done. Look at the split now. That lead group was, what, 20, 30 strong maybe? Huge gaps. One of the Lotto boys going through there could have been Mario Et, perhaps, who I had the pleasure of talking to when I was over for the Tour of Malaysia, the Tour of Langkawi in Malaysia some weeks back earlier on in the season. He enjoyed himself out there for the first time, and he's got good form since as well, since he came back. And this second group is by no means the rest of the peloton. So what I said what might happen certainly has happened. Guerini back in that second group, just spotted him there. Remember, he's a good climber. Remember Alpe d'Huez those 2 years or so ago when he won the stage despite falling off when he hit a cameraman? He's back in the second group. That's unusual. So the damage has definitely been done. The pace being forced by the various little attacks and counter-attacks by Francesco Casagrande, who I must say has impressed me enormously with the efforts that he's been putting in, although is it wise, we'll see, time will tell. It has had the effect of splitting this race up into various groups. Here we see one of the groups at the back, 1 minute 17-18 and counting, as they come to the top of this 6th and final climb of the day. So a lot of damage has been done here. Remember, this is by no means a long stage, particularly 139 kilometres in the greater scheme of things. The Tour de France has been used to stages of more than 200k every day. Well, not every day, but, you know, quite often. We've got longer stages to come. Tomorrow's stage, for instance, from Zala to Gasteiz is 183 kilometres. The day after that, it's 170 kilometres. Slightly shorter to Villabona on Thursday, 154 kilometres. And then, of course, on Friday, the much shorter stage prior to the time trial in the afternoon, 94k in the morning, and a time trial, what did I say, it was 15.2 in the afternoon. So this is actually the shortest road stage. We'll forget the split day on Friday. Of the 4 main days when it's just a road stage, this is the shortest. And yet, the damage that these 6 climbs have done, plus, of course, the enterprise shown by the riders at the front of things, has done an enormous amount of damage. And the general classification sheet, I suspect, as we now look at these riders coming off the 6th and final climb now, in the last 12 kilometres down to the finish, the general classification sheet, which lists riders at this, at that, of course, depending upon their time loss, it's going to make fascinating reading come the end of today. Well, there you see the arrow showing you where we are off the top of that last climb, off the top of the Col de Bézi, and quite a fast descent, but let me just remind you, there's one little comp back upwards. It's not a king of the mountain or anything like that, but it's not all downhill back into the Finnish town of Zala. There's one more slight climb to go over, and this lead group more or less all together now. How many would you say there were? 25, 30 riders maybe in this lead group. It's a fairly strong lead group. One of the orange jerseys are the Euskaltel boys on the front at the moment. Very fast bit of descending here by this lead group, and the field behind just shot to smithereens by the Enterprise at the front. 9 kilometres to go, so they're well down the descent already. And Casagrande, I suspect, is still up there in this lead group. He's been doing a lot of the forcing. We've got 1 or 2 of the Team Coast boys there. I can see that we've got riders also from the French Cofidis team. This is Euskaltel on the front, Team Coast, Cofidis, Once, Mappy. Mappy have got riders up there too. So a good cross-section of several of the leading teams have found their way into this lead group. And it may well turn out to be a sprint finish from amongst this lead group now. Well, if it's a sprint finish, my goodness. Yes, pass. Now then, we've got one rider trying to make sure that it isn't a sprint finish by trying to go away on his own. Now, is this that little climb that I was expecting? 8 kilometres to go. And one rider trying to get a little bit of a toe off the cameraman, if he can, but the cameraman is wise to that and won't let... Oh, well, now then, how interesting this is. This is David Rebellin. Now, David Rebellin is a very interesting rider. He's won 2 classics in his time. He's now with one of the lesser-known teams after a great career. He's with Gerolsteiner, and the Italian won the opening stage here last year. Now, could he do it again? He also won stage 3 as well. Didn't finish in the top few overall come the end of the week, but 2 stage wins. It wasn't a bad way to start the race by winning the opening stage. David Rebellin, he was with Liquigas last year, well-known Italian team, of course, but now he's moved to Gerolsteiner. Coming towards the end of his career, I would suggest David Rebellin, but he's been a very good rider and had many, many good professional wins to his name. Stage 1, stage 3 last year. Wouldn't it be good for him if he were to win stage 1 once again? 2nd year in a row, that would be. Well, his gap is not a big one, but he's got to commit himself now, I would suggest, because there's nothing else for him to do now but get the bit between his teeth and just go for it. He's nothing to lose by having a crack at this late stage, has he? He's not had a win so far this year. He was 2nd in the Grand Prix Lugano at the beginning of March, and that's about it for the moment this year. Road Tirreno Adriatico, and the best he could manage there was a 5th on one of the stages. But the Italian, well, he's turned 30 now. He'll be 31 in August. And what's his lead? Well, there you can see from the aerial camera, it's barely 100 metres. But even the lead group is splitting under the pressure as they chase after him. He's got 6k to go. I don't think he can possibly stay clear as we go through this little town of Balmaceda, which is just on the outskirts of Zala. He can't possibly stay clear, surely. I know he's got a mind to, and he's all concentration there, but surely the 31-year-old Rebellin knows that they are very, very close behind him. On the big ring, turning a big gear. Look how brief that saddle is. These modern cutaway type saddles, there's nothing to them these days. You think, ooh, that's got to split you in two, but actually it's surprising, really. They are remarkably comfortable, otherwise you would not see professional riders like Rebellin and others using them. Now there's that little loop that you saw earlier, 25 kilometres before. We're back there again. It's the same run-in as you saw them do about half an hour or so ago. So they'll be well familiar with it. Now the lead group, the chase group behind Rebellin, as you see, has split up. The pinky jersey there, that's a Team Telecom. The yellow Once jersey rider there, and Rebellin has been caught by those 3 or 4 riders, so we've now got a little lead group of some 4 riders. Whoa, now then. This looks like Michael Boget for my money. 5k to go. Boget, the former Dutch champion. In fact, I think I spotted the coloured rings around the edge of his sleeves. Most champions ride with the jersey. If they've won a world championship or a national title in the past, they are entitled to ride with the world stripes on their cuffs, or the national colours on their cuffs, to signify that they have been a champion. There you see it, definitely is Boget. There's Rebellin, there's Boget. And, oh, it's Vinokurov from Team Telecom. Vinokurov's up there. Oh, it gets better and better, this, because Vinokurov, of course, has just come off winning the one of the all-time famous races, the Paris-Nice race, which very nearly got cancelled altogether. When Laurent Fignon, the organiser, former Tour de France winner, decided that he hadn't quite got the money and the kitty, and he was bailed out by the Société de Tour de France. There's another race that Mario Cipollini can't ride. Ha! What a comment he made. And Casagrande back in the peloton now, just a few seconds behind this leading group, still determined to get back in on the action. He's done tons of work so far, but can they pull back these leaders? Well, I think they're going to. It's all coming back together again, apart from one rider up the road. Now, that surely is not Alexander Vinokurov. It is Vinokurov! Vinokurov, who got a medal in the Olympic Games and now has won Paris-Nice as well. And Vinokurov, Alexander Vinokurov, who I first saw way back in 1993 in the Isle of Man. I may have mentioned it before, when he was a youngster, very shy, didn't speak hardly any English, and he won 1 or 2 of the criteriums, or comesses, in the International Cycling Week in the Isle of Man in June, which these days, by the way, is July. Make sure you people get over there. It's a great week of cycling. That's where Vinokurov first came to my notice anyway, when he was just a little-known Kazakhstani who was in the team that rode in the Tour of Britain, the milk race that year. But Vinokurov now very, very truly with the bit between his teeth, and he is going for it. He's in the last 5k now. He's gone under the 5k to go sign. Alexander Vinokurov from Kazakhstan is going for it in this opening stage now of this Tour of the Basque Country. Well, they all know the run-in because they all did it on this loop about half an hour ago. And Vinokurov has not got very far to go now to the finish. Can he hang on? It's getting ever so close. 3 kilometres to go, 3,000 metres, and he's got the gap. Well, all he's got to do now is grit his teeth and give it everything he's got. But they're massing that little lead group behind him, and there's some good riders. Rebellin is still back there. Casagrande is back there. Michael Boget, the former Dutch champion, is back there. Can Vinokurov hold off big names like that? He's a class act, isn't he? And as you saw him in the Paris-Nice race here on Eurosport, he rode it ever so well. Vinokurov won the 4th stage up to the mountaintop. That's where he took over the leader's jersey, and he held onto it despite great stage wins from Petaki, Frigo, former winner, and Robbie McEwen, who's had so many wins already this year. But Vinokurov, well, that's amazing. They've come back at him just like that, and all of a sudden it's all back together again. Well, the lead group is all back together again. David Echevarria, well, he's quite a strong one, but with Vinokurov back in the fold, it may well be that it's down to the sprinters after all. But what sprinters have we got in this group? Of the riders I've mentioned so far, none of them are what you would call pure sprinters. 2 kilometers to go, so here's a chance for somebody, maybe a lesser light in this lead group, which seems to have actually come back together a little bit more than I thought it would. Remember the big splits on the climb. We've got one of the Kelmy boys having a go now off the front. Now, could this be Ayrton Gonzalez? Not quite sure, but he's not clear anyway because they're right on him. And so he desists, and this lead group swallowing up Vinokurov in the last couple of kilometers. Now, it's not long now before they get to the red kite. And is that another of the telecoms having another go? Could this be Andres Klunen or Giuseppe Carini perhaps? Or is it Vinokurov again having another go? I don't believe that. If it is, I can't believe that this is Vinokurov having a second dig, and this time he's not been able to catch them unawares, and they're still up with him. So even that little dig over the level crossing there has all come to nothing, and they're right on his wheel as they go under the red kite. And Francesco Casagrande is in there in second place inside the last 1,000 meters. Boget is there, Vinokurov. Well, there's so many big names in there, it's going to be very difficult to see who's going to win this. Vinokurov's not done yet, he's still having another go. One of the Seiko riders is up there, that could be Danilo Di Luca. Now, if Di Luca's up there, or is it one of Di Luca's lead-out men who's looking for him? We've only got about 500 or 600 meters or so to go, and here we come for the mass finish. And if Danilo Di Luca is there or thereabouts, he may well be the lead, the best favourite to win this stage, because he's already had a number of good sprint wins so far this season. He was the runner-up in the race overall 2 years ago, won Lombardy last year for Seiko. One of the Mappi boys there having a big dig. That could be Paulinho Zanini winding it up, but Stefano Gazzelli, the team leader, is not a sprinter. There's Rebellin coming to the front now. Rebellin couldn't yet win this. Rebellin, or is it going to be the Mappi man? It's going to be very close on the line. I don't think that Rebellin has got the gap. He can't find a way through, and on the line, it looks like it's a win for the Rabobank team. And that could be Sberg or Niemann. Let's have a little look at that one again. Boget was there, but Boget is not a sprinter, and in fact it is Sberg. I thought it might be Sberg who came through a gap, and the Swiss man for Rabobank has got the opening stage of the Tour of the Basque Country. Well, that had a lot of action in the closing kilometres. We saw a lot of work from Francesco Casagrande, the former world UCI ranked #1 rider, and also in the closing stages from the Kazakhstani Alexander Vinokurov, but it all came to nothing, and it was down to the sprinters. I thought at one stage the Seiko boys were winding it up for Danilo Di Luca, but he couldn't find the wheel of the rider who was doing the lead-out work for him, as we see a second group coming in, having got detached on the 5th and the 6th of those climbs that the riders have had to go over today. But in the end, Rabobank found the man for the job. Sberg of Switzerland came through to take victory on the line in an exciting sprint. I thought at one stage that Rebellin was going to do it, but he somehow managed to get himself a little bit boxed in, couldn't quite get there, but Sberg managed to find the gap, and he came out the win. He's been with Rabobank for quite a few years now, celebrates his 31st birthday next month. Sberg for Switzerland, taking the honours on the opening day of this exciting tour. I love these Spanish tours. The countryside they go through is great. It's hard cycling, but very scenic. If you're riding a bike race, it certainly is extremely hard. But the crowds in Spain, they love their racing, and they've got plenty to go at. You look through the list, and it all starts with that Challenge de Mallorca. You've got things like the Ruta del Sol, the Tour de Valencia, Murcia, Catalana, the Pais Basque, which of course is this one. You've got Aragon, Granada, Asturias, the Tour of Madrid, the Tour of Navarra, the Tour of Catalonia, Cantabria, Castilla y Leon. What a list, the Tour of Burgos, Galicia, and of course the big one of all towards the end of the season now, the Vuelta y España, the Tour of Spain. So if you're a Spaniard and you're into cycling, you'd never have to go very far to watch a good bike race. They're terrific races, they're always well organised, the public love to come out and watch them, and well, they've seen a very spirited stage here to now. Watch this, on the right, left of the picture, there's Rebellin at this moment leading, but he goes over to his right, and then you see Sberg coming, and suddenly Rebellin is boxed out of it, and Sberg takes it up with about 100 metres to go, and Sberg hangs on very, very well. The Swiss is a renowned galloper at the finish, a right arm in the air, and as you see the side-on shot, he's got at least a bike length in hand over the next rider, who is Rebellin. That's Rebellin in second place, and it's one of the Mappy boys, I think, just sneaking third. Yes, it is. So a good result for Rebellin, because he did quite a bit of work earlier on, still managed to get, there's Casagrande, by the way, third, fourth, maybe fifth place on the line. So he's had a good day too, doing a lot of work, and obviously he's got good form. And one of the Lotto boys, I think that's Ertz probably, Mario Ertz, who was up there for Lotto, but not as far up as was the stage winner, Sberg. And there you see Sberg on the left of those three. Rebellin at this stage I thought was going to win it, but Rebellin went over to the right-hand side and then was really shut out of it a little bit by Sberg. Nothing improper there. Sberg keeping a fairly reasonable line, not exactly putting anybody into the barriers or anything like that, but clearly the fastest finisher. And Seiko missed out there. I thought that they really made a bit of a mistake. Danilo Di Luca should have been near up. I'm quite sure I spotted one of the Seiko boys with maybe 600 metres to go, looking back for him. He was out for the front, and I think he was looking back to see where Danilo Di Luca was. Di Luca's had the most victories for the Seiko team so far this season, but there he is on the right of the picture, but he was far too late coming through, didn't find his lead out man, and there goes the right arm up in the air, the right arm of the Swiss, who's won the stage for Rabobank, Sberg from Rebellin. Garzelli it was, getting third, the former Tour of Italy winner from David Echevarria, and Casagrande a very well-deserved fifth place after all the efforts that we saw from him in those closing stages. But Sberg will be the man wearing the jersey of overall leader when we go into stage two, a much longer stage tomorrow, 183 kilometres from Zala through lovely countryside once again, more King of the Mountains climbs, finishing at a lovely town in the heart of the Basque Country called Vitoria-Gasteiz, 183k.